What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 334. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line from Denver, Colorado, fresh off of his 7th Pro Tour Top 8, Luis Scott-Vargas, LSV. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
That was awesome, man. You back-to-back PT Top 8s? Jeez, that had to feel amazing.
Yeah, it did. That had never happened to me before. It doesn't happen to very many people at all. It's very lucky.
Yeah.
So this has been a good year. I had resigned myself to playing Magic, having fun, maybe not winning as much as I would have liked, but I cannot complain anymore. Well, I shouldn't say that.
Wait a minute.
I'll complain a little less now.
Yeah, right. That hasn't happened at all either. But anyway, seriously, congratulations, man. What a great accomplishment. And God, you have 7 PT Top 8s. It's so insane. So on the show this week, we've got a whole lot lined up. We've got a special guest that I'm going to bring in just a minute here, and we've got the Crack-A-Pack and all the normal stuff. Before we get into it, though, channelfireball.com. They are the sponsors of this podcast, and they are the best place to go on the internet for your Magic cards, period. You can buy singles, you can buy sealed product, you can get apparel, you can get supplies, you can sell your cards back to them to turn them into more cards or turn them into cash, whatever you prefer, and you can do it all at channelfireball.com, along with a host of awesome free content. I mean, we're talking sweet articles, videos, and podcasts like this one from some of the best players and best content producers on the web. You can find it at Channel Fireball, all completely free over there every single day. I highly recommend checking out CFB for anything that you need Magic related. If you want to support the show directly, you can do so via the Patreon. There's patreon.com/limited resources. And Luis, we hit a pretty cool milestone while we were in Spain.
What was that?
We have 1,000. We crossed the 1,000 patron mark.
Nice.
Which is fantastic. And so I wanted to take just a moment to say thank you to everybody who supports the show. You help make it awesome and able to do new and exciting things like the videos we've been working on and a whole bunch of other stuff. And you make it so that Luis and I can keep doing the show. We really thank you for it. And I'm going to also thank you over the next few weeks by doing some sweet giveaways. I've got some really cool stuff. I can tell you that next week will be the first one, and I'm going to be giving away the playmat from the Pro Tour. So this is an Avacyn playmat that's double-sided, so you can flip it over and it's got the red side. And I'm going to be giving away one of those to one of our patrons. It's not too late for you to be eligible for that. Anybody that's a patron will get it, even, dollar level or anything. And you also get a thank you card no matter what as well, and some other cool perks. So thank you so much for supporting the show. It is much appreciated. Okay, so let's bring in our special guest before we get to our Patreon question of the week, because he might have something to say about it. This person has been on the show multiple times before and always brings his A game. He's been on a little bit of a hiatus due to starting a family, but I'm happy to have him back on the show. It's Noah Weil. Noah, welcome back to Limited Resources. It's been a while.
Thanks. How you guys doing?
Not too bad. We've been hanging in there and keep cranking out the shows. Even when you're not here, we still find a way to do it. But
I know they're worse, but that's still, how many was it? 300 million, was it?
Episodes?
Yeah.
We're on 334. Yeah.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, it's been a really fun run, and I've enjoyed every time we've done it. And yeah, it's been a while since we had you on, but I remember last time you sparked some nice controversy among our listeners with your take on tournament Magic, and we're going to get your ideas on some stuff that we like to talk about on the show, but we're going to get the Noah Weil specific version. We're going to talk big picture here in just a little bit. Before we do, though, we've got the Patreon question of the week. This is, of course, open up to our patrons. They can send us questions and we answer them. And hey, if you've got anything to say about it, no, I'm sure they'd love to hear it as well. This one comes from Adam Labonte, who says, do either of you, or do any of you in this case, ever get Magic fatigue? I find that once in a while, usually around the middle of the 3/4 mark of a draft format, I become overloaded with Magic and step away for a while. The downside of this is that when I eventually do come back at the end of one format or the pre-release of another, I'm way out of practice. Does this happen to you? What do you do to recharge and preserve your edge when you've had too much Magic? Noah, does this ever happen to you? Especially like when you were grinding on the Pro Tour?
I love this question. Mm-hmm. in anticipation of this, we had talked about coming back on the show for a while, So in anticipation, I had downloaded my match history, my lifetime sanctioned match history. All right. And it turned out I had played 2,277 sanctioned matches of Magic.
Oh, man, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. I've won 1,485 times in tournament matches. I'm really proud of that. A little more is there. I have a 100% win rate against Louise. Just in sanctioned Magic 100% of the time. And I
Nationals 2008, I believe.
Yep. Every match we played, I beat. And this one's important. I have a 0% match win record against Marshall.
Oh, jeez. Have
never
we never
beat him
played?
in sanctioned play.
Have we ever played?
We did. We played one time at a PTQ.
Wow. All right. Well, I'll just stop right there then.
I was eliminated from top 8 in the last round, and so are you, and then you beat me anyway.
All
so
right.
That's what happened.
The pride match.
So
over
this
your
guy,
2,000 matches, did you ever take any breaks in there or get fatigued?
Like there was breaks, but there's also like serious periods of playing a lot, like multiple sanctioned tournaments a week, just where the stores were in my hometown. Adam Levante, is that it? Said he was fatigued from playing too much. That's interesting because I find that people who take breaks who think that's a little too much Magic for them actually have no chance of making it to the Pro Tour. That's like a genetic marker that's saying they can't ever reach to the top levels.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so Adam should probably retire if he doesn't have that drive to continue playing beyond all exhaustion and interest.
At least for the Pro Tour aspirations.
Yeah, or even like his local FNM or anything. It just kind of just shows that he doesn't really
You just want him to quit Magic altogether.
He just doesn't have it in him.
I think he could probably get away with still playing FNM. But is there some truth to what you said? Like, I do find that a lot of the people that are the most successful on the Pro Tour don't tend to show those signs of like, I'm just kind of not feeling like playing Magic anymore or for a while. Not that it never happens to them, but like if you look at the high level pros, I don't hear that from them. They just play and play and play and play and play and play.
I think it's a chicken and egg question because I know if I'm not interested in playing, I'm also not going to be winning. If I enjoy playing the game and I'm still being stimulated by it, then I know I'm playing better and my mind is there and I'm engaging with the cards and the other players. So I have no problem taking a break. If you're not into it, you should definitely take a break because you're going to start losing more. You're going to get more frustrated. You're going to wish you weren't there and you're going to regret, playing in the first place. But I don't agree that taking a break means you will come back worse. Sometimes changing the scenery, taking a break and like give your subconscious mind a chance to process stuff. And then you come back and you have new insights. So I'm supportive of taking a break, but I don't think it's required, and I think a lot of people aren't into it because they're still enjoying the game. So you really have to be sensitive to how you're feeling about it.
What about you, Luis? Especially when you were fully dedicated full-time Magic pro,
which I am clearly now with back-to-back top 8s.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
I've been grinding GPs all
You
year.
know what I mean. When it was really all you were doing was making Magic content and playing when you didn't have your job and stuff. Did you ever find stretches there, when you were playing seriously where you were like, just going to take a few weeks off?
So I didn't actually, but part of the reason is it's not that I never took time off Magic. It's that I would just change what kind of Magic I was playing.
Okay.
There are some draft formats, for example, like a lot of our listeners, I'm sure there's plenty of our listeners who just draft or just play sealed or some combination. And if there's a format they don't like or they played a lot, they get burned out and they maybe take a break. For me, it's more like if I don't like a draft format, I'll just go play Constructed, I'll go play Standard, or I'll play Modern, or I'll play Vintage. I can just switch to or Cube Draft or whatever. And so my breaks from Magic are just playing offbeat formats more than not playing at all. But to speak to kind of what some other pros do, other people who play a ton of Magic, is some of them do take breaks. Like Paulo Vitor Damarosa, he's a good example of someone who sometimes between Pro Tours he just won't touch a Magic card or play on Magic Online for like a month or something. If he doesn't have a Grand Prix or a Pro Tour to go to, then a lot of the time he decompresses by just not playing Magic. Whereas that's just not what I do. I don't play Magic literally every day. Like I did not play today. I don't think I'm going to actually end up having played today. But I think I can't remember a week where I didn't play Magic, and I play Magic probably every other day, and I consume Magic content just about every day. And like I said, it doesn't burn me out because I just do a lot of different things. There's a lot of different things you can do within that.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, interesting stuff from Adam. I think that it definitely benefits you if you have that grind, gene. I do believe that, but I do think that, that balanced lifestyle is super, super important to being successful in anything. And you're going to have to just figure it out for yourself. It's not uncommon, though, what Adam said, right? I mean, I
actually just like Noah's answer, which is if you ever feel
the genetic marker.
If you ever feel like taking a break from Magic, just put down the cards. Don't pick them back up.
Yeah. Sorry, Adam. We do appreciate the question. All right, let's get to the Crack-A-Pack here. This one comes from Ferran, who says, thanks for all the content you make. You're welcome, Ferran. Got this in GP Barcelona. And let's see what we've got here. All right. So we've got a Grotesque Mutation. So that's the 1 in a black instant. Our creature gets +3/+1 and gains lifelink until end of turn. Find card, not going to first pick it. Emissary of the Sleepless. That's the 4 and a white 2/4 flying spirit. And it has, well, what is it called again, Luis?
Morbid.
Morbid. Thank you. It has Morbid. You get a 1/1 flying spirit token. Another.
Should that have Morbid? Should that actually have the ability word to call back Morbid?
I don't know. I'd ask Luis.
I don't think so, because it's so long since Morbid got printed. It's just kind of weird to have it there, and it's the only card in the set that's like that.
Yeah, it is the only card. Here's one that's gone up a lot. I know in your mind, Luis, and mine as well. Jace's Scrutiny. 1 in a blue for an instant. Target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. And if that were the end of the story, we've seen this type of card many, many times, and they end up not making the cut. But this one, it has Investigate. You get a clue as well. So it gives you the card back, which is a pretty big deal on these type of spells.
I like Jace's Scrutiny a lot. I think I want to defend it a little bit, because there were some people after the last show saying like, why are you so high on Jace's Scrutiny? Why are you so down on something like Sleep Paralysis? And the answer is that it is a 2-for-1. A lot of the times, this is just going to be a 2-for-1. You're going to set up a combat where you double block a 4/4 with 2/2/2s, or your 3/3 jump runs into theirs, and a 2 mana to cast the initial spell. Then you can crack the clue at your leisure. So even though it's 4 mana total, the fact that it's 2 now and 2 at any point is a big deal. It's also a spell which helps for Delirium if you're like blue-green, or the spells matter like Pyrohound deck if you're blue-red. Overall, Jace's Scrutiny has gone way up in my estimation. I think it's a very good card. It's one of the top blue commons.
Okay. I have it not quite as high as you, and the main reason is the type of deck that I've enjoyed drafting still, by the way, is that blue-white deck. And this card actually isn't that good in it. You'd think it would be pretty good in that type of deck, but you need to be able to reach out to the other side of the battlefield and get a blocker out of the way, and this doesn't do that. Still, I also have graded this card a lot higher than I originally did, and have it quite high. Noah, any thoughts on Jace's Scrutiny?
Well, you guys know I don't play Magic anymore, so take that with this grain of salt. But I remember from the original Innistrad, it was a really big deal that they passed with their werewolves and they're about to flip them, and then you have a cheap instant to basically screw over their whole turn. And so any instant that costs 1 or 2, I think goes up in value in this format, where they're hoping you don't play any spells, and then you surprise them at the end of the turn.
Yeah, and you get your card back even if it doesn't end up affecting combat. Yeah, it's true. Stallion of Ashmouth is the 3 in a black for a 3/3, and it's got Delirium. It becomes the Shade. You can pump it for 1 in a black. That card has been overwhelmingly disappointing for me. I don't think it's very good.
I'm not a fan. You can play it. If you need a finisher like a green-black Delirium deck, playing one of these isn't the worst, but it never ends up being great.
That's exactly where I come down on that card. Inspiring Captain, but pretty good. The 3 in a white for a 3/3 human knight, and when it enters the battlefield, your creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. I found this card serviceable. I think it's pretty good.
I'm a real fan of cards like that they have a plan with what the combat looks like on the board, and then you play that and everything's different and they don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, the effect that this card has in the right curve out is really profound. I mean, it can be responsible for getting in 4 or 7 points of damage that you weren't able to.
And you're still developing your board while you're doing all that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that card. Sanguinary Mage. That's the 1 in a red 1/3 with Prowess. It's a vampire.
It's a fine card. Sanguinary Mage is interesting where clearly we're not going to take it in this pack, I think.
Right.
But if you're already in blue-red, this is a reasonably high pick. It's just other people aren't going to want it very much.
It's like the mini Pyrehound.
It's less a Pyrehound and more a way to keep you alive till you can draw your Pyrehounds. But yeah, it can do that.
Fair enough. Byway Courier. That's the 2 and a green for a 3/2. And when it dies, you investigate. I know this is one that you mentioned in the deck that you like, Luis, the white-green Delirium deck.
Well, Byway Courier is just great in any deck that has forests.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good card. It's again a 2-for-1. All the clue cards are great. I think if you took your initial impression of basically all the cards that investigate and just bumped them up some, you're closer to accurate. Just because Byway Courier is a 3-mana 3/2 that gives you a 2-for-1.
Yeah, that was our question, right? Because we were wary of that during the set review, right? We weren't just blindly like, oh, investigate doesn't matter. We knew it mattered. The question was, could you actually convert this into the 2-for-1 reliably, right? Like this card or any of the spells we've talked about where, am I really going to be able to spend the time and the mana to crack these clues and actually realize the 2-for-1? And the truth is that, yeah, you do get to. I mean, it plays about as plotting as you would expect it to, but it does work. It happens and you do get your extra card. And if that's the case, then a 3/2 that says when this dies, draw a card is like quite good. And this is, in the ballpark for that. This next one is Reduced to Ashes. It's the 4 and a red sorcery, deals 5 damage to a creature, and you exile the creature if it dies. Yeah, and I have this pretty firmly in the necessary evil, camp of removal. I'll run one in a red deck, but I'm never really happy to do it.
I have it in the unnecessary evil camp.
So you actively like the card?
No, it's unnecessary. You can just cut it.
It's just not even there. Gotcha.
I mean, the card's playable. I'm not saying don't play this card, but I really am off all the expensive removals. Just I don't want to pay 5 mana to kill a card that costs 3 or 4 mana. All the good creatures. There's just so many creatures in the set that are either like 2-for-1s or have an effect as soon as you play them. Like if they go 2-drop, 3-drop Inspiring Captain, and you have this card in your hand, like there's no good positive interaction there.
Right.
And just overall, I do not like Reduced to Ashes. Sleep Paralysis is fine. You can play one, but I don't think it's a premium card. It's just not, a high tier removal spell. Like Rabid Bite, I'm into that. Rabid Bite's a card I can get behind. But these expensive like Throttle type removal cards, they're just not what I'm looking for.
And Sorcery Speed, no less.
Yeah. I would call them a necessary evil.
I agree with Louise. I think if you can have a deck where you can cut it, you're happy about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Wait, I think we're all saying the same thing, right?
Well, no. You're saying it's a necessary evil as in, like, you have to play it sometimes because you need removal. We're saying...
Yes, that's exactly
We're saying you can just cut the card. Like,
come on, that's ridiculous. You even said earlier you would play the card if you needed removal. That's the definition.
If you need removal, but I don't think you need removal. Like, I have cut this card from decks that are light on removal. Because I think if you have enough proactive cards, then you're better off just doing that instead.
Okay. Well, and I will say I like Sleep Paralysis a lot better than I like Reduced to Ashes.
Yeah,
I've been playing
Sleep Paralysis is clearly better, but I think it's worse than Jace's Scrutiny. I think it's worse than a lot of the other blue cards that you like. Stitch Mangler is clearly the best.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
I've played more Just the Winds than Sleep Paralysis. So
okay. Yeah, I like Just the Wind better as well. Might Beyond Reason. This is 3 and a green instant. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature, and if you've got Delirium, wow, you get an extra +1/+1 counter.
Well, this card is not beyond reason. It is actually just straight up reasonable. It's it's a fine card.
I think it's bad.
It's not good, but having one of these as one of your combat trick slots, especially if you have a low curve deck, it is a blowout. If you
that's true.
If you can toss this on a 3/3.
If you go 2-drop, 3-drop this card, you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, the problem is that this format does have a significant number of ways to blank this, either by bouncing it right away or, sleep paralysis or something like that when they untap. And you set yourself up for, a disaster against blue decks. And then against other decks, it holds its own. 4 mana combat tricks, even if you get to keep the thing, is such it just bottoms it out for me. Like, I just prefer the cheap ones so much
I don't
better.
disagree, but there's this red aura that's 3-0 first strike.
Oh, Spiteful Motives.
Spiteful Motives.
Yeah, and that card has always performed really well when I've seen it. So why is that so much better than this one?
I guess because of first strike.
Yeah, that card is certainly better, but I do think that points to might be on reason being a little bit more playable than you might think.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Again, I'm not saying the card's premium, but I think that, set by set, very similar cards often have very different values, and whereas like Reduced to Ashes or Throttle, I think they're worse than they are whenever you see these kind of effects in other sets, and I think Might Beyond Reason's a little bit better.
The removal's just crappy in this set, right? Like
it really is.
It's really bad. Like when I've been starting to try to piece together what the puzzle looks like from a big picture, and when I see Throttle in the set, I say, okay, well, this is the new age of removal, and this is just what we get. But man, yeah, like the cards we've brought up, Sleep Paralysis, the Reduced to Ashes, Throttle, like these are all just so right? Like you play them sometimes, but like you guys both said, you're looking for reasons to take these out of your deck, right? You're not, normally with removal, you're like, how much of this can I fit in my 23 cards? But these cards are so mediocre that you'd rather just not play them if you can avoid it at all. It's kind of sad, actually. Here's what I want to hear your guys' thoughts on. Tenacity. So that's the 3 and a white instant. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain lifelink until in the turn you untap those creatures.
Ooh, can I take this one first, Louise?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It does nothing. It's got no text on it whatsoever.
It has both flavor text and rules text. You can't say that.
Okay. It has text that doesn't do anything.
So you're off it. You don't like the card?
I don't see how you're going to spend 4 mana. It's like the 3/3 captain. Does the same effect, except you also have a 3/3 afterwards. And this one, you might get lucky with some lifelink, or you might get lucky with some ambush or something. But realistically, I can see it as a sideboard card and narrow matchups. But main deck, I hope and never play it.
What about you, Luis? Where are you at on Tenacity?
This has a lot of the hallmarks of a narrow card, which is it's going to be bad a lot of the time, but when it's good, it's just going to be the best card in your deck. That being said, that's just not going to happen all that often. Inspiring Captain's much better. This actually feels a little like Might Beyond Reason to me, even though I think Might Beyond Reason is better. But in the sense that if you have a deck full of creatures and have not a whole lot of spell slots, then this is a good one to put in those spell slots.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think you end up like that. There's just so many good tricks. Like True Faith Sensor is a great equipment. Strength of Arms is a great trick. Inspiring Captain. Like this is like a tier beyond or behind a lot of the similar effects. So there's not that many decks where you end up actually wanting it.
Yeah.
I do agree that the less tricks you have, the more these become valuable. But It's a bad card.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. I have certainly been on the bad end of it where people have completely, I was in some race situation or whatever, and then all of a sudden they were at 19, and I took 3 or 4 extra damage in the attack, and it's like, well, now I just can't ever win. And I still didn't let that sway me. When I see this card pop up on Magic Online, I rarely take it. Gloom Widow is 2 and a green for a 3/3 spider with reach, and it can only block creatures with flying. Nice little beatdown card here.
I like it in red-green and basically nowhere else.
Yeah,
because
same.
Red-green's just the one green aggressive deck, and for the most part, the other green decks just want good blockers.
Yeah, I think people tend to play this a little too much, a little too often. They'll just throw it into, whatever deck and just say, oh, it'll be fine. And, the fact that it can't block ground creatures really stings sometimes. I mean, that is a major drawback on the card. This pack has not been amazing, has it?
No, I think I'm
taking
Byway Courier right now.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. All right, well, this next card's pretty good. It's Inner Struggle, 3 and a red for an instant. It says target creature deals damage to itself equal to its power.
It's a real card. I would definitely say that the struggle is real, but I don't think that it's a card I'm taking over Byway Courier or even Jace's Scrutiny. It's just a little too expensive. Like all the removal that costs 4 or more mana, I'm happy to pass on.
Yeah, at least this one's an instant. They give you that. They threw us a bone. It's uncommon. They're like, okay, fine. Our conditional expensive removal, we will make it instant speed for you, and we rejoice. Yeah, I mean, I think the card's fine. I don't think I've cut it from a red deck yet. I've been pretty happy with it generally.
So I've found in my experience, and again, this is from my inexperience with Shadows, but when there's ground stalls and things are slow, which it sounds like this set is, that means there's more toughness than power generally. There's a lot of 1-3s and 2-4s running around versus 3-1s and so on. Is that the case with Shadows?
There's a decent number, yeah.
Yeah, part of the drawback of this card is that it misses sometimes. Like you can have 4 mana, they can have 2 creatures in play, and it can kill neither of them.
Yep, that does happen. Yeah, card's mediocre. Our double-faced card is Convicted Killer. Speaking of mediocre, that's the 2 in a red 2/2, and when it transforms, it becomes a 4/4. It's just got the normal werewolf contingency there for the transforming. So that's not going to do it, but we've got a rare. Oh, no, this got easier. We've got a mythic rare. We've got Jace, Unraveler of Secrets. So we got a Planeswalker. So that's sweet. 3 blue for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. You can +1 to scry 1 and draw a card. You can -2 to return a creature to its owner's hand. And you can -8 to get an emblem with whenever your opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, counter that spell. Well, that got easy, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm not as up on Jace as some people are. I think there's a lot of cards I would take over Jace that people would not guess, but Jace is the best card so far in this pack.
Is there a card you can give an example of as maybe one that you take?
In one of our practice drafts, we took Erdwall Illuminator over Jace.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and I actually think that's just right. I think Erdwall Illuminator is much better.
God, you're insane.
Yeah.
Jace is great.
Jace isn't great. Jace is good. Erdwall Illuminator is great. Erdwall Illuminator is a 2-mana 1/3 flyer that draws you like an extra card every turn, whereas Jace is a 5-mana card that if they have 2 2/2s in play, then you can't really do much with it.
Why can't you do much with it?
You can bounce one and then get attacked, and then they replay their 2/2.
Yeah, and then you draw a card, and then you play a creature, and then you're ahead.
Well, then their 2/2s attack you again, and if they have anything else,
I mean, but you get to play creature. Even the scenario you laid out, it's not bad. I don't know.
I'm not saying Jace is a bad card. I will always play Jace. I will take it relatively early, but I think it's less good than the premium uncommons. Like Duskwatch Recruiter versus Jace isn't even remotely close.
I think it's much closer than you're giving it credit for.
It's just not, though. Duskwatch Recruiter is just one of the top 10 cards in the set.
Yeah, I think that Jace is in that discussion as well. The card's excellent.
The card is excellent, but it's just not. It's not in the when we laid out every single card in the set. The premium uncommon level of Lightning Axe, Duskwatch Recruiter, Erdwall Illuminator, that sort of thing. Jace is a tier below all those cards. So
man, I have him right in that same.
Yeah, and that's reasonable.
I think Duskwatch Recruiter is probably better. I agree with that, but I would take Jace over Erdwall Illuminator. I think.
Yeah, I think
card's insane, dude. Have you read it?
I opened Jace in my first 2 drafts, so I've had some experience.
So you certainly know what's going on with Jace.
I just think that the cards that cost 1 and 2 mana that are powerful are just better than the cards that cost 5 mana are powerful. And this isn't like a blanket rule. I'm not every card that costs 5 sucks.
But in this set,
Avis is just the best card in the set by miles. But I think that the really effective cards that cost two mana or less are just so good in the set. There's just a lot of them that are really, really excellent.
God, I can't believe you have Erdwall Illuminator in that group.
Yeah, shine a light on it.
All right, let's move on to our main topic here. Noah, you wanted to chat about the big picture, and so I'm going to let you kind of start down that path, and then I'll start peppering you with questions as we get into the meat of the discussion.
So like I said, I played this tournament a couple weeks ago. It was a PPTQ. And it was the first tournament I played in at least 6 months, maybe longer, right? And certainly the first time playing Shadows of Innistrad cards. In fact, the only reason I played this was because I wanted to play the pre-release because the set looked fun, and I wasn't able to make it there. So this was the next tournament where I could play with them. I had no...
this was also your pre-release.
Yes, it was also my pre-release. I had no expectation of doing well, and I didn't expect if I did do well to continue on to the regionals or to the Pro Tour. So I'm playing. I'm out of practice. It's already kind of weird for me. So let's take a step back, okay? I as you know, once upon a time I used to play quite a lot, and I would see the same people at the tournaments, and these would be people I would hang out with between tournaments, socially or when we were practicing Magic. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that social aspect too. We were competitive. We would try to beat each other, but there's also this camaraderie of us versus total strangers, right? And it's been so long since I've been involved in the game in any serious way that I knew next to nobody there, and I missed that aspect of it, that there wasn't people I could cheer on or be cheered on and such. So already I'm not thinking this feels different than it used to feel. On the other hand, once upon a time I had a reputation for being good at the game, and that would affect things, and now nobody knows who I am. And it was fun to play people, and I would be reading cards, and they'd be like, I don't know who you are. You don't know any what the cards do. Obviously, there's going to be a cakewalk, and then, they're signing the match slip too. And that's enjoyable, too. But, from a big picture point of view, I was curious how I would feel playing the game with this new paradigm, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it makes a difference. If you don't have that group to hang with and to do the friendly social stuff with, it impacts how much you can enjoy a tournament, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not sure that's really what your question was, but it was interesting.
No, I mean, that's true for you too, Luis, right? When it comes to Magic, just you put a lot of importance on, your environment, basically, whether that's the people or the team or whatever.
Oh, for sure. I remember there have been a couple times over the course of my Magic career where I've gone to a Grand Prix outside the US where a lot of the people I know didn't go, and they're universally unsatisfying experiences compared to going to a tournament here for the exact reason that Noah said, where when a bunch of people in the tournament, where if you're doing poorly, you can root them on, and if you're doing well and they're doing poorly, they can come hang out. And either way, people to hang out with after the tournament and all that stuff. I remember going to Grand Prix Madrid in 2010, and I knew 3 people in the tournament, because this is when a lot of people weren't traveling to foreign Grand Prix. I just went there because I had family in Spain I wanted to visit, and it was a 2,000 person tournament. And I remember I would play my round, I would lose because I was playing a very bad deck, Enchantress, and and then I would wait an hour for the next round, but I wouldn't do anything, and I was just wow, this sucks. So I'm not disagreeing with anything Noah says here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So how did the tournament end up going for you, Noah?
Oh, I won it. I mean, that part was fun.
Very nice. Yeah.
But so I'm playing, excuse me, and I'm just falling into my own rhythms. This stuff, you don't forget it. You play enough tournament matches, you get your cadence, you get your style, I don't know, for lack of a better word. But my seal deck is this black-red. It's good. It's really good. It's got Olivia. It's got the 3/1 Madness creature for 2. It's got this Madness engine. It's got a Fiery Temper, Lightning Axe, the enchantment that lets you discard cards to make 1/1 life linkers. It's got the skeleton you buy back. It's a pretty smooth seal deck. And the worst card in it is by far the Burn from Within, or not Burn from Within, the 5 mana one.
Reduced to Ashes.
Yeah, I also have Burn from Within. That's not the worst card in my deck. That card was great. But yeah, Burn to Ashes was always just disappointing every time I had it in my hand. And if I was better, I'd be discarding it. But sometimes I need removal. I can't pitch it, but it's a great card to discard. Anyway, so I'm playing a relatively aggressive black-red deck. And my routine is always the same. I'm looking at my opening hand. Am I going to keep it? Well, what are my early drops? How am I going to use my mana every turn? And we're playing the game. There's cards coming out, and I'm thinking, what could he have right now that would be devastating? Can I make it less devastating if he has it? Is it worth trying to make it less devastating? How am I going to win this game? What's the sequence of plays I'm going to make? I'm going to attack with these 2 creatures. He's going to block 1. He's going to take this. Next turn, I'm going to, all this stuff. And it's just this constant question in my mind. How can I win the game? How could I lose the game? And every turn is just like that. I just am finessing my moves based on those 2 questions. And I'm not literally asking myself in my head every time. Sometimes I am, but sometimes it's just, I need to not overcommit here. I need to play 1 more creature because he has enough mana to play 2 creatures, and if he does that, then I'll need this extra guy on the board so I can kill him, that kind of thing. And it's just looking at the big picture to direct my plays, and it's satisfying because it's working. Every time
Sure.
I'm making moves based on looking at the entire board and what he could do and what I could do and adjusting because of that. it's successful.
I want to get into the nitty gritty of this with you, because you're basically talking about having a plan, right? You're talking from the big picture perspective. You want to have a plan, and that's something that we talk about on the podcast a lot. But I like that you're taking us, to a pretty granular level here. And there's a few questions that I find that pop up to me pretty often. And I'm curious how you approach them. So one of them that you just mentioned is you'll try to predict what your opponent is going to do next, right? And I want to know, how specific do you get with that? Do you just ask yourself, like, are you trying to envision what the board state could possibly look like the next turn? And I don't mean every possibility, but I mean, do you say they could play a creature? What does that mean, right? I mean, are we talking about, like, are you thinking about specific creatures that they could play? Or are you thinking about
I'm definitely
creature?
not, because I don't know the cards. So
right, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I can't think of that. But it's always about their mana, okay? Every option they have is limited by the amount of mana they have. So I know if they have 3 mana, most likely their creature will have 2 toughness or 3 toughness, right?
Okay.
The next card they play. And if they have 5 mana, they can play a 3 mana creature and have a trick left over, or play 1 big 5 mana creature. And so these are the kinds of things I can determine what their limits are. They can do, I mean, in one of my games in the seal deck, I attack with 2 creatures, 1 in the air and 1 on the ground. And I thought, he could have a card that gives a guy reach. And if he does that, he'll have to trade. It'll still be like a 2 for 2, so it's not that bad. So that's the best he can do. So I'm attacking. And he played this card. It costs 5. Evasion, AVA, something. Anyway, it ripped me apart. And that was a card I didn't really expect. And it had a lot of text on it. I think it had like a bonus receipt paper that you had to unfurl to read all the words on it.
What card was it?
I don't know. It was some white card. Okay. But anyway, that got me. Poof, I was dead. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. And that'll happen, I guess. Some crazy card will happen you didn't expect, or you hope they didn't have it and they had it. That's fine. But generally, it's hard to explain, but just partially what their mana is, mostly their mana, but partially the way they've played the game, you can start narrowing down what their options are. And when you've narrowed down their possibilities, then you can start making more informed choices and proceeding.
Now, when you were at the height of your powers, you were playing on the Pro Tour regularly. You had a lot more free time to dedicate to knowing all the cards and getting into it. You weren't kind of just, using a PPTQ as your pre-release. How specific were you able to get then? Were you actually narrowing it down to specific cards, or was it still a little more general?
If it's limited, every card in the set.
Mm-hmm. Right, but I'm saying, like, so let's say that it's your third turn, you're on the draw, so your opponent already has 3 mana, they just played a creature, and you're trying to map out, well, which of these 2 cards should I play, right? Maybe you've got, a 3/1 creature that could attack, assuming that your opponent doesn't play anything, with high toughness or whatever, or you've got something like evasive, but it's a lot smaller, it's a 1-powered flyer, something like that. Are you actually saying in your head, okay, if my opponent has this, Duskwatch Recruiter, then I can't do this or that, or is it more just like, if they use up their 4 mana on a creature, then it is likely that it will be of this size or bigger, even when you know all the cards.
Oh yeah, totally. So if I have a 3/1 in my hand and they're going to have 4 mana next turn, I'm going to expect my 3/1's not going to do anything. They're probably going to play a giant spider or something, or play a 2 mana creature that can block, and then maybe have some mana left over for a ping effect or another creature or something that my 3/1 is just a wasted turn. So if I feel like my creature won't do anything, won't have any impact on the board, then I'm not going to play it. I'll play something else. On the other hand, if I think they're going to play a high power, low toughness creature themselves, I can have the 3/1 there for blocking and, move with that. But the whole point of every turn is to make it as impactful as possible. If it's moving you forward to winning or preventing them from winning, whatever, there's got to be a purpose behind what you're doing every turn. You can't just say, oh, I've got 5 mana and this card costs 5, I better play it. If you have a 4 mana creature that makes much more sense based on the context of the game, play that. It's ideal when you can use your mana every turn, but it's more ideal if you make the right play.
What are the questions and how do you determine that? What are the questions you ask yourself, or what is the things that go through your head to determine, what's going to make the most impact?
It's hard to say, because what my opponent does guides me on what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they keep this hand? What is the sequence of lands they're playing? What do these colors normally do? Kind of thing. Do they start off small and just play progressively bigger creatures? Can I beat progressively bigger creatures? Do I have some bounce spells to keep the tempo going? Or is it a bunch of little guys and I've got to go in the air? Things like that. It's really hard to say if they're playing blue-white, here's what I'm going to do. But it does narrow down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. It's one of those things where I find it super interesting, because I think that the way that the brain works is a lot more nebulous, right? It's when you're playing a game of Magic, and, like Luis is the same when he's playing, where you're not, which is why I brought this up, you're not really asking yourself specifically, which card in the set is my opponent going to play, because that's kind of fruitless, right? Like there's too many different options of cards that they could play. If they have 4 mana in 2 different colors and they've got 5 cards in hand, you trying to predict exactly which card they're going to play on their turn isn't really a good way to spend your mental energy, right? Because as long as you know what types of cards they can play, then you can, usually adjust accordingly.
Well, it is and it isn't. When you're getting into a format, or you're not super deep into it, then yes, I agree with that. But later in the format, that's where you get the edges. When you think of like, oh, well, this, like, I tend to discount rares unless I know my opponent specifically has a rare, or I have a specific reason to think they have a rare. I don't really, those don't enter into my mental calculus. But like when you're thinking like, wow, if they had Stitched Mangler here, I'm just going to get murdered, then there's a reason to play around that card, even if you don't know if they have it specifically. Like,
yeah,
there's definitely cards that you should be trying to optimize for and against. And the more you play a format, you basically, yes, you don't have time to go through a list and mentally think, okay, what about this, and this, go through the whole thing.
Right.
But one of the advantages, and one of the reasons I really focus on playing a lot, especially before a big tournament that I'm trying to do well in, is that I need to offload that all onto my subconscious and just look at a situation and have my brain tell me like, oh, you need to worry about this card, because that comes up pretty easily. You don't have to think about it. Like how when at a pre-release people have gotten in the habit of like, let's look at this article, or let's look at this list that has every combat trick, so I can try to like start internalizing them.
Yeah.
Once, a couple weeks in, when I've done 30 drafts, I know all the combat tricks. And when my opponent attacks with a 2/2, and I have like a 2/3, a 3/3, and a 2/2, I can think of all the different tricks and why I wouldn't want to block for each one. And, I don't have to like consciously run through the entire list. I can just kind of shortcut through a lot of them, because you can dismiss the ones that don't matter.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about though is a little different, because you're talking about basically envisioning maybe not the literal worst case scenario, but like a bad case, like playing around something that you can avoid doing. Right.
Well, right. And I'm just saying that's like the next level of doing this, because what Noah's talking about is trying to figure out when playing a 4-drop on 5 mana is better than playing a 5-drop, and part of that has to do with what's better in this current situation.
No, that's a great point.
The next level is what's better if they have card X, and how can I play around that? Because I'm not saying you should play around every single card. You can't. Sometimes you'll lose games by trying to play around cards when you don't have the luxury of doing so. But you do have to keep in mind like what your opponent's reactions are going to be. Like, why are you playing this card? Like, it's the sort of thing where sometimes you'll use Stitched Mangler on your opponent's worst creature because you want to tap down their worst creature, because their better creature is the one they have a chance to block with, and you'd rather them block your 3/3 with their better 3/3 instead of their worst 3/2.
Right,
Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah, and I find this is really interesting, because there is a progression here, right, of thought, which is, I think, in and game out, and when you're developing your board and you're moving things forward, you have to be considering what types of things your opponent are likely to play on their turn, right? Which is kind of going to what Noah was outlining. And this is a more vague thing, because I don't think that like if you're just developing your board and playing out creatures and you've got a choice on which creature to play, it should occur to you that if your opponent's going to have 4 mana, that there's certain types of cards in their colors that you would expect to see. Like we were saying, like high toughness, low power creatures, or the opposite, or any number of small to mid-sized creatures. But then when you get into positions that are a little bit later in the game, I find that that's when I really start kicking on the thing that you're talking about, Luis, which is I start immediately going through those worst case scenarios, or maybe just bad case scenarios is a better way to put it. But yeah, times when you're like, wow, I could attack here for 2 damage. I could get that 2 damage in, but if my opponent has Stitch Mangler, I literally die. Right? Like I'm just dead on the spot.
Well, I want to say the way Luis talks about it is completely correct. Playing 30 matches, seeing how games play out, how creatures run into each other, it's the only way to learn. You can read all the articles you want and listen to all the podcasts you want, but until you have that tempo, the cadence of how the games play out, you're just not informed on how games actually are done.
Oh yeah, you got to lose a game to Voldaren Duelists before you can play Shadows. You got to lose a game to Malevolent Whispers.
There are some podcasts that if you listen to it like an episode or two, you'll have mastered the format, but none of those spring to mind.
Well, if you learn about one of those, let us know.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it on here. But yeah, I agree 100% with that part of it. But the part that I like to focus in on actually is because to me, I think about like your average Magic player, and they'll eventually get to the point in their Magic career where they're thinking about these things, where they're starting to play around more spells and more creatures and more scenarios. But you have to get to the point where you're just thinking of the next turn and thinking of what your opponent's going to do, because most people, when they're developing, don't. They just play their cards, and then they look over at the side of the table and kind of wait and see what happens and hope that nothing bad happens, when they sometimes don't realize that they're actually empowered to make a pretty darn reasonable guess as to what their opponent's going to do. And the reason why I'm hammering on this point is because I think that people sometimes get under the impression that like professional players or super high level players are actually thinking about specific cards that their opponent's going to play, when that's not the case. If they're playing around it, then they're going to have a list of specific cards that's in their head. But if it's turn 4 and you're thinking about which creature you should play on your turn, when you think about what your opponent's going to do with their 4 mana, it's probably play a creature, right? And you're going to look at the colors that they're playing and look at the type of deck that you're assuming that they have, and you're going to have a vision of what that might be. And it's not going to be one specific common in the set where you're just like, well, they've definitely got Watcher in the Web, so this isn't going to work. But you're thinking of cards like that, of certain types of cards. And I think that that's an important stepping stone that a lot of times gets lost in the fray. And
let me give you a real classic example. Mm-hmm. You have a 2/2 out, and they have a 2/2 out. Okay, It's their turn. They play their 4th mana, and they attack with their 2/2. Right? If you don't block, what's the purpose? What are you holding this 2/2 back for? What do you expect you're going to do with this 2/2 in this game?
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think a lot of people think, well, I want to attack with it.
Do you have a lot of removal that you can clear the way?
Right.
Are you going to, is it a real life race thing, and you've got, Lava Axe in your hand, and you just need to sneak every point through, and blocking does nothing for you? Okay. But more than likely, they're going to play something much larger on their turn. And then you have this 2/2 versus their bigger creature, and their 2/2 is still out. And now you have taken 2 damage for no reason, and your 2/2 creature is just worthless on the board. And so in that case, even if you're at 20, if you think this 2/2 has got no value for you but to trade with something, you might as well trade now. It's not to preserve your life. It's because it's the right move to get the most impact out of your card.
That's a great example, because this isn't you playing around this isn't you saying, well, if they have Stitch Mangler, I'm screwed here, right? This is you saying this game will develop in a normal way such that my opponent will very likely spend their mana to play something that's bigger than my 2 mana spell. They've got 4 mana to spend on something, and I've got a 2 mana spell effectively here. And it's very reasonable to think one step ahead and say, they're going to play something that's bigger than this, or that can attack through this, or that can block this effectively, basically nullifying it. Right? Where it's not the scenario that you're sitting there, and coming up with literally specific cards like you do when you're playing around something, right? Like a combat trick, or like these powerful game swinging plays that, Luis was referencing. when he was talking about it. But I think that, again, I do think it's like a stepping stone to be able to put yourself into the shoes of the player and make that decision like you just outlined.
And the fun part is when you block there, you don't care if they have a trick or not. Because if you got something out of their hand or something off the board with your crappy 2-mana spell, you're so happy. And in fact, if they play a trick and they kept their 2/2, that's going to be irrelevant really soon, you're even happier because they could have saved something that had much more presence later.
Yeah, and they don't get to cast that 4-mana spell that you were worried about right now either, which of course another big upside. You get that tempo hit as well. Let's actually move the discussion though a little forward to what Luis was talking about, which is when you're in a board that's maybe a little more developed, or the game's starting to get down to it, or you're in a combat situation where your opponent's attacking into your creatures or whatever, and you do start to think about specific spells, right? You're starting to think about, if my opponent has this, then I lose the game on the spot, or then it's really bad for me. You played in a tournament where you didn't really know the cards very well, Noah. How did you maneuver through those type of setting? Because that's a time where listening to set reviews and playing the set and studying up really does help you out.
Yeah, it's not something I'd recommend for your listeners if they want to do well. I feel like I had my gifts of being pretty good at the game in general and just a ton of experience playing limited in the past that let me substitute having raw experience with the cards. But I feel like it's a recipe for disaster generally, and I got kind of lucky to win the tournament I did. But that being said, white has a 5-mana or 6-mana Wrath. There's probably a Pyroclasm or something. There's a Spider in the set. There's a Black Sketch from removal somewhere. There are staples that they put in every set that you can expect are probably in this set.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. What about when it comes to actually playing around things? This question's too hard, and I'm going to acknowledge that before I throw it out to both of you. But how do you go about figuring out when you should or shouldn't play around something, whatever that may be, a removal spell, a trick, or whatever? Is there a thought process that you go through? Because I mean, some of our listeners think that people do math at the table, for example, which I don't.
The hypergeometric calculator.
Yeah, like it just comes out in your head, right? I mean, do you ever have numbers in your head when you guys are thinking through these situations, or is it intuitive? Is it just because one thing I'm just going to throw this out there before you answer is that I know a lot of people that hit the mid levels of being a good competitive Magic player. They get themselves into a lot of trouble because they will be able to identify a problem card or a problem situation, and then they play around it. Because they say, if they have this, then I lose. And then that's the end of their decision-making process, because they say, well, I just don't want to lose, so I'm just going to play around it, even though there's actually a lot more to consider after that, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, I'll give you my thoughts. I'd like to hear Louise's too, but it depends on the impact of the card. If it's a combat trick, you could wait till you had 2 mana open for a bounce spell and overcome that. But sometimes you're just gonna have to eat the trick, right? If they have it, then you're gonna lose a creature. And so then the question becomes not do they have it, but if they have it, how do I minimize its impact on the game? How do I make them use it to kill a creature that I don't care about or save a creature I don't care about? Mm-hmm. And so the conversation shifts a little bit to not if they have it, but since they do have it, what am I going to do about it now? Okay,
yeah, that's interesting. Now, what about in those situations, though? What is the thought process to figuring out when to, change course, basically?
Well, so I mean, the original.
I know it's
question,
an absurd question, by the way.
It's overbroad, but I think yes. that you are getting at something useful, which is what makes it. Why do you make decisions? Why do you play around cards? And part of it is like, what are the odds they have these cards? And
yeah,
and it's not numbers, right? Because I don't know the contents of my opponent's deck. I'm not going to be like, well, there's 17 red commons. My opponent has 23 cards. They probably saw this card in the draft. Like that. That's not super useful. But it's more like what action first. First of all, what actions are your opponents taking that you can get information from? I actually have a pretty good example of this from the Pro Tour. So I played a Ravenous Bloodseeker on turn 2. This is the 1/3 you can discard a card to give it +2/-2. And
was this in the good deck or the bad deck?
This is in the great deck. They both had Ravenous Bloodseeker. But my opponent played turn 3 Howlpack Wolf, 3/3 Wolf. Next turn, I attacked my opponent for 1, played a third land and passed. My opponent then thought for 20 seconds. Not an insanely long time, but long enough that they were clearly thinking, and my opponent was good. This is a dude I played round 3 who seemed quite competent, and attacked me. And my opponent already knew I had Twins of Mauer Estate in my deck and attacked me anyway when I was representing being able to Madness out the 3/5s. This is a 3/5 with Madness, and I had a discard outlet in play. So I did have the Twins. I ended up not blocking there, and the reason I didn't block is because I had a removal spell in my hand. I had an instant speed removal spell in my hand. I had a Murderous Compulsion, and because I have a Madness outlet, it's essentially an instant. I decided the odds that my opponent had a combat trick felt way too high to me because they thought about it and attacked anyway, and because I could take 3 here, play Twins, end of turn, which is what I did, and then next turn my opponent attacked again. I blocked, they played Aim High, and I cast Murderous Compulsion, and that was just basically the whole game. And so this is a fairly straightforward case, but there's a couple layers here. One is that I passed up an obvious good block, right, which is putting a 3/5 into play and blocking a 3/3.
And you traded some life total here for this.
I did. I took 3 points of damage. I also traded some damage because I didn't attack with my 3/5, which I think should have put alarm bells off for my opponent. But
seriously, that was the part where he lost it.
Yeah, where my opponent attacked into it anyway. So, and then I basically used the information that I had to play around a combat trick. If I didn't have Murderous Compulsion in my hand, there's a better chance I block there. If my opponent just jams without thinking, there's a better chance I block there. And that, by the way, is a minor note. If you know you're going to attack there, just jam. This is why you should think in advance. When I pass on turn 3 without playing anything, you should have thought at the end of my turn, Twins, untap, attack without thinking to try to entice a block because you have the combat trick.
Yeah, so that's super interesting. Now, but let's get into the details here, because what you've really done, Luis, is in your mind and at the table, the way that I would break this down after the fact, right? Again, coming from a poker background is, there's software that will break down a hand and all of the elements of it. And we don't have that for Magic because Magic's too complicated, but you can do it on a case-by-case basis. And what you basically just did for us is you laid out 2 columns, right? And in one column, you had the option of, playing the Twins of Mauer Estate and blocking. And if your opponent had a combat trick, losing your Twins of Mauer Estate and accepting a 1-for-1. Right. And in column B, you had the option of not playing it then, taking 3 damage, waiting, playing it, leaving it up to block, and then having your opponent still attack, which was, maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. And then they happen to do it. And then you ended up getting a Savage 2-for-1, which probably won you the game, right? I mean, that type of a high value play has a very high correlation with winning a game of limited Magic. And so you've basically set up these 2 columns. Now, this is hard to do, right? You do this automatically in your head while you're just sitting there. Noah, I know you do it too. I try to do it, but I screw it up a good amount of the time. Forget one factor here, right? If you don't plug in every little scenario properly here, then this can kind of fall apart and become not as good for you. But the thing that I think is really interesting is that once you got to that point, then Luis, what was it? How do you make that? Because you were saying the odds are that they have blah, blah, blah. I mean, are we talking about, there's got to be a gradient there, right? You're not just saying, well, 51% of the time or higher, I think that they have this. So therefore it's likely and therefore I will do this. You have a feel of no, I feel very confident, 80% of the time here, I would guess, or 60%, and that's enough to try to make this play. How are you working that through? Because as far as I know, people aren't generally spewing those numbers off in their head while they're sitting at the Magic table.
And no numbers crossed my mind either.
Yeah.
But it was, if I had to put a guess, it would be I was 70% convinced, and that was enough for me.
Okay.
So and I do have to point out what my opponent. Part of the reason my opponent attacked the following turn is when I didn't block on turn 3, my opponent played another 3/3 on turn 4, and then attacked with both. So they're giving up a lot if they don't attack there, but it turned out not working out very well. I would tend to again use all the information available to you. I had multiple different So like you said, there are columns. For me, what factored into it here was, what are the odds that my opponent has this? It seemed likely. Again, I don't have a specific number, but it seemed likely given their actions. What's the turn going to look like if I wait a turn? And it was highly favorable because I had a combat trick, and the way my deck was set up, if I had a Madness Outlet in play, I could play everything at instant speed. So leaving mana up wasn't a big sacrifice. Like, imagine my hand had a sorcery speed 4-drop that was really good. I'm way more likely to block there because I know I'm not going to leave the mana up next turn. I might as well just trade for a combat trick.
Sure.
It's just all the things lined up perfectly, and this is why Magic's so hard, is that this, I think, fairly straightforward, like, sequence of plays had a lot of different contributing factors.
And it's not straightforward. I mean, remember, this is all predicated on the fact that we're assuming that your opponent is aware of Twins of Mauer Estate and has considered that you very well may have a Twins of Mauer Estate here. Like, a lot of players just will not consider that, or they will discount that to the point of saying, if they have it, they have it. Right? Like, a lot of players don't go that deep, and you've made this whole entire scenario based on the fact that you're not only putting your opponent on thinking of that card and being aware of it and being aware of the fact that they can have it here, but also having an answer for it, right? Based on the fact that they tanked on the beginning of their turn, which is, I mean, obviously Magic's like the best game and it's really deep and there's a lot going on, but I find that super fascinating, right? This is straightforward, maybe at the Pro Tour level, but when you're talking about, an FNM level or a PPTQ level, it's less straightforward. You have to then run the filter through on, do I put my opponent on the type of person who's going to be even aware of this scenario?
So there's a couple more issues. I really like this story. And there's a couple more things. Like, let's say the guy with the Howlpack Wolf says, if he's got the Twins, I can't win. Mm-hmm. I don't have any way to break through the 3/5. There's just nothing I can do. All my deck is 3/3s, so I'm gonna swing in. If he's got it, I'm not gonna win. But it's not worth saving the potential for 3 damage for a card I can't beat anyway. So there's another analysis you could be making.
Totally.
But on Louise's side, he's thinking, maybe I'm taking 3 damage I don't need to do, but my board is great. I'm gonna have this Madness, this Aquamoeba, I'm going to have this 3/5 left over that's definitely going to stay alive. And so even if I took 3 damage that theoretically I could have eaten this creature, I'm not that bad off. It's not like I was at 5 or something. I'm developing my board. I'm still playing the game. And the worst case is that I don't get to develop my board. So the fact that you get to keep doing your own game, even if you lost the potential of, eating a creature, mitigates that potential mistake, because if it was a mistake, it didn't hurt you very much because you're still doing your thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And again, this is like a huge topic, but the more you're losing, the fewer cards you can afford to play around. Like, I thought I was winning this game by a lot. Even if my opponent didn't attack on turn 4, I think I would be in very good shape this game. And therefore, I had the luxury of taking 3 damage and playing around a combat trick because I just had all the cards this game. I had all instants, all bigger creatures, everything. If let's say this was a game where I mulliganed to 5 and the rest of my hand was all lands, I'm just blocking that 3/3 every time there.
You need to get your cards back.
Yeah, I'm not going to win the game if my opponent has a trick, and if they don't have a trick, at least I get one of my cards back. But this wasn't that case. This is the case where I had it all. So you have to decide, when you can afford to play around these things and when not. The classic example, right? Goes back 20 years. Is sometimes you have to assume your opponent doesn't have the sweeper in their hand, the Wrath of God, and just play 4 creatures because you can't beat it anyway. The tricky part is figuring out when you actually have the gas to beat Wrath of God and play 2 creatures and leave 2 in your hand or what have you. And in Limited, it's the same.
It's the same, right? It's a lot of the things that you've built up over the years of playing.
If you're 99% to win a game, sure, play around random rare. Play around your opponent having descend upon the Sinful or Avacyn. If you're 20% to win a game, assume your opponent has 5 lands in hand and is drawing 5 lands.
Right. Yeah, totally. Noah, when you think your way through a situation and you're playing a match, do you use this idea? I use the word columns, right? Of just saying, like, here's option A, here's option B, and maybe there's an option C or a D. Do you think in those terms when you're at the table?
Yeah, totally. What could happen here? Do I care if that happens? Do I care? Okay. How likely is it to happen? If it's very likely, I'll do something different.
Okay. And I
guess it's more of a decision tree than a column, but I think it's the same ballpark.
Yeah, no. I think that the column has a decision tree in it, sort of like, because ultimately at the end of your decision tree, right, you're going to have come up with some number of options, right? Whatever, however many you decide to include, because most turns will present you with many options. And I think that, it usually becomes pretty obvious to players that play often what the first 2 to 3 choices are. And then the question is, well, how do I actually make that decision, based on it? And I find that really fascinating because I think that a lot of people don't, right? They're not actively making decisions on that level at the table. Maybe they could if they went back and looked afterwards, and started to like break these things down. But, it is mentally very taxing, right? Like, I mean, how much of this for both of you, Luis, especially, you were talking about offloading a bunch of this to your subconscious. How much of this falls into the realm of your subconscious?
More than most people think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not for everyone. Different players play different ways, but you mentioned earlier that I don't think a ton while I play, and it's not that I like couldn't explain why I'm doing the things I'm doing, but a lot of turns I try to think on the difficult turns, and on the turns that I consider easy, I tend to have sequences that I'll just play because I have gone through them and I have enough of the information that, like, it's the sort of thing where when I'm practiced and when I know what's going on, then I have a lot more resources to work with, and I can play around more cards, and I can factor more things in. And the way to do that, for me at least, is to practice enough that I have internalized a lot of what is relevant in a particular format.
You're getting a lot more granular when you know all the cards, rather than kind of relying on these heuristics that are like generally good, but 20% of the time they can get you or whatever. You can shorten up that gap.
I agree with everything Louise is saying. I think I'm very similar to the way I play, but I'll also say to you, Marshall, that you talk about how taxing it is to make these decisions. Mm-hmm. I think, at least speaking for myself and probably a lot of other players, it becomes less taxing when your natural instinct is to narrow down what they can do. So it's not like they have the entire realm of Shadows of Innistrad at their disposal. Their mana, their cards in their hand, the way they've been playing, their body language, they all give you these pieces of information that you can shorten the list of what they actually could do. And that makes it a lot simpler because you can narrow down to 3 or whatever things, and then you can make your moves based on that.
I know a lot of people face this pretty often, and I'm going to put kind of a broad question to you too. We'll start with you, Noah. So what happens when you're in a situation, and let's say you're on top of your game, the set, things are flowing for you pretty well, and you come to a scenario where you go through your first option and it doesn't look very good, and then you go through your next option and it doesn't look very good either, and those are your 2 good options, and both of them, the answer to your question is, does this work out well for me, or does this lead to a winning game? And the answer is no. What do you do?
Well, that's extraordinarily broad. It's hard to say.
I mean, how do you approach it? Maybe is a better way to ask.
Again, I'm always thinking about, how am I going to win this game? What am I going to do to win this game? How am I going to have the most impact on my cards to win the game?
Mm-hmm. What if the answer is, I'm not going to win this game currently?
Okay. If I'm not going to win a game, should I concede so they don't see more of my...
Well, no, I don't mean that you can't ever win the game, right? For example, sometimes you just find yourself in a situation where you're significantly behind, right? Or where you've got some options and none of them are good. And I think that
if you've got like a situation where you're losing the race horribly, you're not going to win this race, that. I mean, there's damage control mode. There's like, all right, I guess I chump the 4/4 and I hope to draw Wrath because I have Wrath in my deck. Mm-hmm. Or there's, all right, I'm going to take it and go down to 1 because my top card is going to be, a card that makes 2 tokens so I can block it twice again. Or I assume my next 4 cards are going to be exact perfect 4 cards. It just depends on how bad you're losing.
Okay, but the key is that you're starting.
Sometimes you need to have them draw 4 blanks in a row to get out of it, and then it's like, okay, it's unlikely, but how am I going to set myself up so that if they do have these terrible draws, I can get out of this situation?
So you start thinking, it sounds like both of you start really thinking about your library quite a bit in that scenario, because you don't have the tools. Like, again, the situation that I've given you is, I don't have the tools to win the game with what's on the board and what's in my hand. And maybe I'm even behind. Like I'm currently losing the game by a bit here. You start to really focus on, okay, what is the scenario that happens where I do win the game? Which is usually involves drawing some sequence of cards from the top of your library.
Right. Part of the reason it involves your library is if you had the cards in hand, then you wouldn't be losing.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, sometimes you have cards in your hand. They just don't do, let's say your opponent.
I guess the opposite. Yeah, sure. The converse is I've got all the cards I need, but I need my opponent to not add a relevant card to the board for 2 turns in a row. All right,
there you go.
I guess that's just going to happen.
Sure, and then you just assume it, because I think that is kind of the tricky part for people, is that when they have a route to victory that is findable, right? Like it's like, okay, if I attack with everything, I can get them down to 2, and then if I attack with everything again, I can kill them, and they'll have to have a removal spell or whatever. I think people can start to see those even somewhat desperate lines of play, but it's when they've got 3/3/5s and you've got a 3/3 in your hand and a 2/2 or a 3/3 on the board and a 2/2 in your hand, and you're looking, and maybe you have a removal spell or something. You're looking at your hand and you're just like, I could kill one of the 3/5s, but I still can't attack. I could play a 2/2, but then that gives me, like, best case scenario is like a double block to kill one of them. This isn't going well, right? Like, I'm behind. Like, none of my options are good. If I attack, I lose my creature. If I sit back to block, it's a chump, right? I'm just way behind here. And so I think that a lot of people get stuck there and they're just like, well, I don't see a way to find the victory here, right? Like, there isn't this path that even if it's kind of crazy. And I think that the key is to start thinking about your library in those situations. Start thinking about, well, all the cards in your deck. What are the ones that you could draw here that could get you out of it? And then start to maximize on giving yourself a chance to do that.
I think that's a little too conscious.
How do you mean?
Well, I'm not going to think about every card in my deck. If they have a bunch of 3/5s and I have a 3/3 and a 2/2, what's that?
I'm surprised you said that. If you have a 6/6 in your deck, isn't that what comes to your mind?
Well, what's the issue? Do I not have any cards in my hand, or do I not have any mana in play? That's really the two.
You have both, but none of them, do what you need to do. Like I said, you've got a removal spell and a 2/2.
Okay.
In this scenario, right?
You've got to start whittling their board down. So yeah, you double block, and you hope they don't have a trick. You hope they don't have anything. And if your deck is normal, and you assume you start drawing business, then you'll draw business. If it's one specific 6/6 that randomly wraths them, sure, you can think about chumping to give you one extra turn, in the sense that if you don't draw the card, you definitely will die. But I'm thinking, I have a normal deck. I've got some 4/4s and 5/5s somewhere, and I just need to keep things moving. I guess if there's one specific card that is super relevant, I'll think about it. But generally, it's more about just establishing a board position with your general creatures.
Okay, because what I'm trying to relate back here is that both of you said, I'm looking for a way to win the game. Right? And what you're saying here is the way that you win this game is by drawing more spells, basically, and casting them and trying to stabilize the board somehow. But that's not the same thing, right? I think to a lot of our listeners, they're going to say, yeah, but that's not winning the game. That's staying alive. Right? Which is something that you have to do sometimes, right? You have to change gears and try to decide what the best course of action is and what's going to give you the best chance to win the game, right? But you can get lost in that mud pretty easily, I think, as an intermediate player who's trying to conceptualize these things at the table and say, but none of these lead me to winning the game, right? If I can draw 3 or 4 creatures in a row and my opponent doesn't draw much, I might be able to get stable. And then maybe I could win the game from there. But, it is a different ask, right? Because you're not actively looking for win conditions. You're just how would you describe what you just said, Noah? Like that's, survival mode or, whatever.
It's just how it is. This is the board I have. So what's my best play I'm going to make to win the game eventually? If the first thing I need to do is stay alive and get him to stop attacking me because he can't attack me anymore because my board is better, that's great. Then I can start looking at damaging him. But if he keeps attacking me and I don't have any good blocks, then I'm going to lose.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there's a distinction there for the listeners to, the fact that, your focus at that point isn't winning the game. Ultimately it is, of course. But what the thing that you're actually trying to do is get your opponent to stop attacking you, and then you'll figure out how to win the game later. Right.
This is somewhat of a pivot, but in the finals of the tournament I played, it was draft late at night. My opponent suffered a terrible judge call, which I definitely want to talk to you guys about. But
well, you can bring that up now because we're kind of winding down the show anyway.
Okay, well, let me just finish this first point.
Sure.
In the final game, I'm a little mana screwed. I kept it. The hand made sense to keep, but I need to draw a land. I didn't draw a land. He's a little on tilt from the bad judge call from before, and his deck was fairly controlling. It was when he wins the late game, and my deck was super aggressive. But because I wasn't doing anything, he should have been much more aggressive, and he couldn't get into his head to take advantage of my stumbling on mana. And this comes up all the time in one of two ways. Either somebody is so stuck to how their deck is supposed to play, they can't change gears and look at how things are right now and do something different, or they're behind, they miss land drops, and so they're like, I give up. I can't win. He played 2 creatures. I haven't played any creatures. I have discarded my turn. I can't win. This game sucks, whatever. And to my credit, pat myself on the back, I was very methodically making the right plays with what I had. I played a creature when I could play a creature, and I just, kept the spells that are relevant. I don't know if I'd actually discard during the game, but I was very focused on establishing a presence and then attacking, and he made some mistakes, and I was able to win that game, even though I stumbled on mana because I was still focused on what I was trying to do.
But you felt like if your opponent had properly read the board, then he could have just pounced on you and
I don't know if he would have won the game, but I was shocked that he was not making the attacks when he had the presence he did.
Okay. Yeah, that's great stuff. This stuff's hard to conceptualize, right? Like I appreciate you guys taking a stab at actually getting this information out, because I know that these are the questions that a lot of our listeners have, and I know that there's not a clean answer. I get it that you can't just say, oh, this is how you do that and that's it. But if we can start to look at how you piece together the logic and what things are going through your head, and if they want to after the fact, so that they can get practice at piecing together that logic when they're not at the table and make it easier to do when they have more time. I think that's really helpful. I know it's a little abstract, but I do actually think it's helpful. And the reason I know is because it's helpful for me. So I think that's good stuff. Why don't you tell us about this judge call before we take off here?
Excuse me. So he's got this blue creature that transforms when you sack a clue.
Yeah, Daring Sleuth.
Yeah. It seems good. It's
fine.
He end of turn pops a clue, untaps, draws a card. Okay? And then he's like, oh, I should have transformed. And the judge says, no, you drew a card, you untapped, you're looking at stuff, maybe you played a land or something. It's too late, you missed the trigger. Okay, that's fine. So then later, that turn or the next turn, he pops a clue again, draws a card, goes to transform, and he says, no, you drew a card. The way the layers work is you're supposed to transform it. You sacrifice the clue, you put it on the stack, transform resolves first, transform it, then you draw a card, and you've missed it again.
No way.
You can just stack those either way, though.
Yeah, you can do it however you want. Also, they have out of order sequencing, which is like nothing. It's insane.
Yeah, it was so dumb. Excuse me. And it was totally ridiculous. And so I was in an interesting position because I told the judge, I think you're dead wrong on how that works. I just think you're wrong. First of all, it's mandatory. Whatever. He clearly intended to transform it. You told him a few minutes ago to do it. So I think you're just super duper wrong, and I don't agree with it. And you should look it up afterwards. And so the judge said, well, if you don't really care about enforcement, then I guess, yeah, you can do it. And so what he did was he put
that's weird too.
Onus on, it was terrible also. He put the onus on me as the opponent to decide whether the ruling should be upheld. And so it put me in a bind, which it really was not supposed to do. It was a bad judge call. I told him, look, if that's your ruling, that's your ruling. I don't agree with it. I could be wrong. I don't think I am. But you can't just decide that the rules shouldn't be followed because I might disagree with them.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So if that's what your ruling is, it's unfortunate. It's not transformed, but you can't tell me that the rules don't apply for this turn because I'm just going to draw a bunch of cards then, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Also, I'll note here that Noah's a lawyer. So, I feel like you have a pretty good compass for this type of thing, too. So, yeah, that's pretty brutal. So what ended up happening?
Well, he didn't transform. He's supposed to. He didn't transform. I don't think it mattered ultimately in the way the games played out. Maybe it did. It wouldn't. It certainly would have helped him, but it didn't transform, and it made the game a lot easier to win.
Wow. I mean, that's a relatively minor upgrade. Like, obviously, it matters, but it's not like he was transforming into a 6/6 or something.
Yeah. It's a 3/2 prowess versus a 2/1 or whatever.
Yeah, I was red-white though, so every little piece of power and toughness mattered.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, can I just tell you that the reason I won that draft and won the tournament was because Abyssinian missionaries and neglected heirloom play really well together.
Oh yeah. Oh man, that's gross.
Yeah, that is good.
They were always so surprised when I played it, and I said, I drafted it face up. You saw it all, and they're like, yeah, I guess, but bam.
Yeah, that is a total beating. Well, nice job on the win, Noah. Are we going to see you on the Pro Tour? You got a RPTQ to be successful at, and we'll see you out there.
Well, it's limited. It's a sealed deck, I'm told, so that's appealing.
Do you know where it's at?
I'd assume Card Kingdom.
Oh, is it in Seattle? They're not. They're regional. Sometimes you have to fly for them.
Well,
the last closest one was in Vancouver.
Well, what I'm planning on doing is, if it's in Seattle, I'm going to go there. I'm going to get my promo. I'm going to get 6 packs, and then I'm going to go to Portland with my wife and my kid and have a weekend there.
So we will not see you at the Pro Tour then.
It's just not possible with my life right now. Okay. Even if I had the day to play in that, which I could move things around to play in it, I could not go to Sydney, Australia for a week or any length of time at this stage to play.
You'd also have to go for longer than a week because there's a GP that you wouldn't want to miss.
I mean, I'd have to, right? I would be obligated to do that.
Yeah, that's
you won the PPTQ. You are now obligated to play in the Army.
You are now obligated to fly to Australia by any means necessary. Yeah. I would get killed too. I'm super out of practice, and I was able to win a local tournament to get lucky with a good seal deck and some lucky drafts and bad judge calls, but there's no way I'd have anything of substance at a real event, and it's not worth the time.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody's life changes, in that way. Okay, well, let's call it a show here, gentlemen. That was really good stuff. Again, thanks for diving into kind of the abstract stuff for me. That was very useful. I hope that it translated over to the listeners. Noah, where can people find you, and what have you been up to?
Well, I don't play Magic. As you guys know, I've formally retired. I'm never playing again. Oh, can I just also say that I was going to play this PPTQ. I called them the day before, and they said, we've got 20 people registered, so it should be a few hours long. I'm like, oh, great. That won't cut my whole day. Another 30 showed up the day of, and then it was so badly run. The thing that was supposed to take 6-7 hours took 13. It was just terrible. It just made me not interested in doing this again because it just shot my whole day.
I'm glad you got that off your chest.
I mean, it's.
I don't know how that's relevant, but I'm glad that you feel better.
When I didn't have other things going on, which you asked me about, I wouldn't have cared because
sure. But I was talking more about podcasting. Let's say,
whatever.
Articles.
But, I mean, how badly run do you have to be to double the length of the
tournament? Just going off,
and I just kept winning. I couldn't leave. I had no reason to leave. I was so frustrated.
That is brutal.
Yeah. So
and I just kept winning. I couldn't leave. That's great.
So do you have any information on where we can find you or any other complaints you might have?
The floor is yours.
What was he doing? So I'm an attorney. I represent people with traffic tickets and people accused of crimes. I'm not going to name names, but I'm pretty sure I've represented more Magic players than any other lawyer on earth. So that's something in my credit. But I'm in Seattle. I have my office in Seattle. I have a website where I blog about law stuff. I have a podcast.
It's very interesting, I'll have you know. I read all your blog entries.
Oh, I appreciate that. I enjoy writing it.
You probably had Luis at the name of your website, and he couldn't leave after that.
It is Better Know a Lawyer.
BetterKnowALawyer.com.
Where can people find the podcast?
I'm on iTunes.
Okay.
They search for I guess my name, but BetterNoahLawyer.com, and they'll find the Criminal Defense Podcast.
And what about on Twitter?
I haven't done it in a while. I used to do these by myself, and I'd have guests sometimes, and the ones with guests were so much more interesting, as I think you know. 2 people is better than 1 person for podcasting.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been trying to schedule people. and I've got some exciting ones coming, but I haven't updated in a while. But it's not done. I'm planning on producing more episodes, and I enjoy doing it.
Great.
You understand?
Cool. Yeah, totally. Where can people find you on Twitter?
Noah_Weil, but I'm not there much, so don't bother. Yeah. It's just a waste of your time. You could do better than you.
All right. Noah,
but you should like my law office Facebook page, because that one I update.
Because that actually matters for your social media presence.
I'm there more.
All right, man. Hey, Noah, thanks for taking the time to come on the show. It was good to have you back on after what was ultimately quite a long hiatus, and I always appreciate your blunt approach to the game. It's good, and it was fun having you back on.
It was fun being on. Thanks for having me.
If you want to find Luis on social media or me on social media, it's Marshall_LR and LSV. You can also find everything related to the podcast on lrcast.com. I want to remind you that Limited Resources is brought to you by channelfireball.com. Make sure you check them out for all of your Magic needs and for the best free content on the internet when it comes to Magic the Gathering. Again, I'm going to be giving away one of an Avacyn playmat from the Pro Tour. That was like a limited edition thing. You can't get them, but I got one there, and I'm going to give that away to a patron. So if you want to get in the drawing for that, you can head over to patreon.com/limitedresources. That is going to do it for the show this week. Thanks again to Noah, and we'll see you guys next time.
For my sign off, I want to do something a little bit more serious, as is probably no big surprise to those who are a little more dialed into kind of like the pro Magic scene. There were some pretty big changes announced last week on Sunday of the Pro Tour. Mm-hmm. And the biggest one, and the one that caused the most problems, was the announcement that platinum appearance fees were going to be reduced by about 90% for next year. And the response to that was not great. But what I really want to talk about, and just a short note, is that how awesome the community was and what their response was and how much it mattered to those of us who play professional Magic. Because I'm a firsthand observer of how the community and at large and pro Magic players do not always see eye to eye. They don't always line up exactly, because they're just, they're in some ways different groups, and then they have different aims and goals. But in this case, it was like a unanimous front. And the awesome part about it is these changes affected like 30 people in terms of like direct financial impact, and thousands and thousands of people voiced their displeasure with them, and they stood with the people who play Magic for a living, which, yeah, I mean, it's an awesome job, and there's a lot to be said for it, but these were frightening changes for those who rely on that as their primary source of income. And so I guess on behalf of a lot of players, and I don't even consider myself a pro Magic player in that sense anymore, but I just want to say,
you are a platinum player.
I am now platinum, sure. I hadn't been for a couple of years, but there was a time when I was a pro Magic player, when that was my primary source of income. And I guess just on behalf of all the people who are doing that, I want to just say that the community really stood up for the pro Magic players, and they really appreciate it, and they really think it's awesome. And it was just, I don't know, it was pretty incredible. That for the number of negative feelings that came out of that announcement, that was a huge positive. I consider it a huge win. I think it was just an awesome sight to see, and I don't think that pro Magic players are going to forget it. So it was just a strange occurrence and a strange happening of events there, but I think there was some good to come out of it.